Next, I'm going to add some forces into this graph. Whenever we're using forces, we want to start off by combining them all under an add forces compound. So under forces, I'm going to pull an add forces compound into my graph, which accepts multiple vector inputs. It starts off giving you access to one. And I'm going to pull in a little bit of gravity, a little bit of drag, and start with that. I'll output the add forces. I want this to be calculated on a per frame basis. So I'll plug the add forces compound somewhere in my ice tree, maybe obviously before the simulate particles and before deleting particles at age limit. So after I've set the particle color, I'll insert a port afterwards, and I'll move my add forces compound into the fray. So the port resolves. I'll just rearrange some of these nodes and compounds here. And now if I hit play, we get a better looking effect. If I pull that add forces compound off, the dust rises a little bit too much for my liking. So again, I restrict it more to ground level. If I need to have the particles rise off the ground a little bit more, I can either reduce the drag, and also reduce the gravity vector. If I double click the gravity vector, my gravity is pulling down with a strength of -9. So I can actually have the particles come up a little bit higher in the air, and maybe come back in and adjust the drag. Let's go a little bit shorter there. Okay, that's not looking too bad. A lot of times when you're using the volumetric shaders, stray particles that get away from you in your viewport here won't even be shaded, because volumetric shaders need a number of overlapping particles to have their effect visible. If I wanted the particles to blow back with a slight direction, maybe I want the particles to trail back on the -z axis, I could add in a wind force. I could add in a wind force directly through the ice tree, or I could pull in my own customized wind control object, which has been accessible through the XSI particles for years now. I can pull in my own wind vector, control object, wind, and you'll notice we have an icon here, and wind is a global value. We're just kind of aiming the wind in a general direction. So I can pull the wind icon into my graph, and it'll pull in with an output type as a 3D vector. So this is our wind direction. If I plug this into my add forces compound as a new force, so I have 3 forces now, I can actually get the wind velocity to push the particles back if I have a stronger wind. If I lower the viscosity or increase the viscosity, we get more of a plume kicking up on the character's heels. Again, any values that are a little bit too high tend to throw errors in the graph, so you'll find that certain values work within a proper range. So I'm going to use a very small flow viscosity there. Perhaps I could even take the wind vector and rotate it up slightly so the particles have a slight up direction as well. Okay, I think that's looking all right, and we can move on.